Joining me now from the Capitol at Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C., representing Florida's 1st Congressional District, Congressman Matt Gaetz. Congressman, I want to talk to you, of course, about Florida recovery, but first, this possible deal that's possibly being struck between President Trump and the Democrat leadership on DACA. I see it this way. This affects three different factions of the GOP. You have the GOP establishment, that may be rather roiled by this. You have the Liberty Caucus, also possibly roiled by this. And you have the Trump base, possibly roiled by. So three different factions of the Republican Party could be alienated, if you will, by another deal with the devil, as I like to call it. I don't know where you fall in those three categories, but let's start with Paul Ryan in the GOP establishment. He doesn't seem none too happy about this.
Well, Speaker Ryan shares my concern and the president's concern with the real lack of progress we've seen from Republicans in the Senate. And so it's easy to understand why the president, dealing with that frustration, would want to go and achieve some sort of consensus on some issue. Democrats have been doing so much to block our agenda getting to this point. And so I think that Speaker Ryan probably shares my frustration with the fact that we've had to get to this point.
So you're talking about frustration in the United States Senate that legislation is being clogged up there and that many things can't get through parts of the Trump agenda. Is that what you're talking about? And the filibuster and cloture and procedural matters in the Senate?
Yes, the American people would be, I think, very happy if the bills that we'd passed in the House actually became law. Repealing Dodd-Frank, repealing Obamacare, cracking down on sanctuary cities, defunding Planned Parenthood, the major conservative priorities that so many Republicans campaigned on. But unfortunately, the United States Senate is becoming the place where conservative reform goes to die. And I think that's why President Trump is so frustrated and why I think he's trying to do everything he can to forge consensus. But that should not get us to deviate from our principles. Remember, Republicans are a rule of law in their ideology and in their approach to immigration. And we cannot have amnesty of any kind. And we have no credibility in pursuing amnesty in the absence of a truly secure border. Border security has been the president's focus up until this point in time. It should continue to be our focus. Illegal crossings over the southern border with Mexico are down by half. And I think we can do even better to regain the credibility with the American people that we can be a nation of laws and a nation of borders.
I would throw in there that the last thing the Republicans should be doing is caving to Schumer and Pelosi and Obama, because this sounds like, from what we're hearing, who knows what the framework would be like of a DACA law, an actual law, or a dreamer law, if you want to call it that. But it seems as though the Republicans are always ready and willing to cave to what the Democrats want. This would be a blow, obviously, to conservatives. I think you would put yourself in the conservative category from what I know about you. But it would also be a blow to the Trump base as well. But I also look at history as a guide here, and President Reagan in 1986, when he struck that deal with the Democrats for a limited number of amnesty in exchange for border security. Well, we got one, and we know it's not border security. So to me, this could be deja vu all over again.
It really could, and it points out the necessity of securing the border first and foremost. And until we get that border secure, we won't have the credibility with the American people to pursue other types of immigration reform. And so that's why I want to see wall funding. I'm proud that in the House of Representatives, we've funded the first phase of the wall. The Senate has not taken action on that yet. They should. We've also cracked down on sanctuary cities that draw people across our borders illegally. And I think those are the types of reforms that are consistent with the Donald Trump agenda. I'm like so many Republicans here in Congress. I ran so that we could execute the Donald Trump agenda, not the Hillary Clinton agenda. And this DACA move seems to be more in line with the way that Hillary Clinton campaigned than the way that President Trump campaigned. And so I'm eager to see us return our focus to border security. Right. I think that will get us the credibility we need to pursue other important immigration priorities, stopping people from overstaying their visas, having a guest worker program that really works, and then using immigration as an economic development tool. So we're able to leverage the most talented people around the world for economic growth in our country. But that is an America first immigration strategy. The DACA strategy is something that I fear could be very different.
Maybe you're right. It could be a presidential rope-a-dope going on here and testing the waters. And the reaction, I think, from this potential deal, just word of a potential deal, answered that question for the president and anybody else who happened to be listening to Twitter or Facebook or any other social media. Pretty much blew up on the conservative side when this potential deal came out. Now, you mentioned the budget. You're on the budget committee. It seems as though this is possibly a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get one or two conservative budgets through onto the president's desk and actually working in this country. And by conservative budget, I mean funding the military at a higher level, possibly defunding Planned Parenthood at all, a balanced budget. Wouldn't that be nice? And also possibly a return to regular order. Now, you have a 3-month respite here because of this deal that was brokered by the president with the Democrats. So is there a chance we still might get something of that nature?
Well, today, as a matter of fact, the House of Representatives took important votes on key conservative appropriations bills that defunded Dodd-Frank, that defunded elements of Obamacare, that doubled down on border security and standing up for our military after 8 years of the Obama administration limiting the capabilities of our soldiers and sailors and airmen who go downrange to fight for us. And so I'm proud of the work we're doing. I do serve on the House Budget Committee, and the budget we passed out of committee that every Republican voted for not only balances, but actually cuts entitlement spending by over $200 billion. That's so important because we've got to get people off of the couch, back into the workforce, and we put a priority on making sure that able-bodied childless adults who can get a job actually have to go and do so, and they don't just get sucked into generations of government dependence. And so if we would pass the budget that the House Budget Committee drafted, if we sent that to the Senate and made that law, we would really be on steady footing for conservative reform. But that's going to take courage from Republicans in more moderate-leaning districts. And frankly, we should get some Democrats on board, because if we don't deal with these budget challenges we have, not much else will matter, because we will be on our way to $30 trillion in debt by the year 2030, and that's just not sustainable.
Would be nice for the Republican leadership to get out there on point and say, hey, listen, we're going to deliver a balanced budget, because we haven't had one in 20 years or so, more than 20 years. It's about time, you know, folks at home, you balance your budgets. It's about time the federal government balances a budget as well. And that brings me to the debt ceiling real quick. There's a congressman out of Pennsylvania, a Democrat, who says that he would like to get rid of the debt ceiling. He's proffering some sort of bill. Obviously, it probably will never see the light of day. But the bottom line is the debt ceiling is there for a reason, and that's to hold down the profligate spending that the United States Congress has a history of doing.
Well, you're so right. The debt ceiling is one of the very last tools that economic conservatives have at our disposal to stop out-of-control spending here in Washington. Think about it this way. For generations, special interests have carefully crafted a system in Washington where no one is really responsible for spending. Everybody can just point the finger and blame someone else. And it's only by having a debt ceiling that we get to put members on record on the board to see whether or not they support this wave of generational theft that is occurring in the United States of America right now. So I will fight with everything I have to stop Democrats from eliminating the debt ceiling, because we have got to have every tool at our disposal as conservatives to try to save this country from the entitlement spending that is truly hollowing us out.
Amen to that. Now, before I let you go, the Hurricane Irma, you represent the Panhandle. Do you think that the government's predictions, there was a little bit of pushback to the government predictions post-hurricane. In other words, a lot of residents from Florida, I'm hearing, said the hurricane, in a sense, was overpromised and under-delivered. Are you okay with the government prediction and response so far?
I am very proud of Governor Scott's response to this storm and the heroic work of so many of our local first responders and planners in our municipalities and counties in Florida. I think the federal government played a proper role at being accessible and available when necessary, but not trying to Bigfoot the evacuations and the response. And look, as a Floridian, we've learned that we'd rather be over-prepared than under-prepared, and so I'm glad that Hurricane Irma was not as devastating as she could have been, but there are still many, many Floridians that don't have power right now. And certainly in Florida this time of year, if we don't have the air conditioning on, we can get a little grumpy.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially when the temperature hits the 90s. And by the way, I don't mean to lessen the damage, because we know parts of the Keys and other parts of Florida were seriously damaged. Loss of life was minimal, except that tragedy at the nursing home, of course, which was a horrible thing to have happen post-hurricane. But the bottom line is, it's a good thing to emerge less scathed than predicted here. And Congressman, we thank you for joining us, and keep up the good budgetary fight on Capitol Hill.